besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be starting a new reading vlog. So this vlog specifically is going to focus on cozy fantasy because I feel like that is a subgenre of fantasy that's been getting really popular. And so I have picked out 3 books that I'm really excited to get into. First of these is Long Shadow by Olivia Atwater. This is the 3rd book in her Regency fairy tale series. I have just been flying through these books. I actually read the first one for my most recent vlog where I read Half a Soul because Monica picked it out for me in my TBR takeover video. And so after I read Half a Soul, I immediately moved on to reading 10,000 Stitches, which is the sequel. And then I was like, why not keep going? Because I've had this vlog planned for a while to read cozy fantasy. And so I originally thought I was going to be reading Half a Soul for this, but then Monica ended up choosing it for the TBR takeover. So it kind of like accelerated my reading in the series. So the premise of this one actually includes characters from the first book. So I don't necessarily want to say a lot about the plot in case you want to read it and you don't want to know about like some of the relationships and like what's going on. But our main character is a girl named Abby, and she is exploring the deaths of girls around the ton. Like these girls keep like dying in their sleep, and so she's trying to figure out what happened to them. And there's a bunch of fairies involved. Pretty much every story has to do with fairies making trouble and different magicians and just light magic in general. So the next book that I'm going to pick up is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This is actually my 2nd book that I'm going to be reading by T. Kingfisher. I read The Hollow Places for the first episode of TBR Takeover where Riley picked what I was reading. This is basically just an ad for all of my TBR Takeover videos apparently, so I'll link those down below if you want to watch them. But essentially Riley had me read that. She's been loving T. Kingfisher this year, and so she's been recommending those books a lot on her channel, and then obviously she had me read one as well. And so I'm pretty excited to be reading this because it's very different than The Hollow Places. The Hollow Places is actually a horror book, so I definitely wouldn't classify it as cozy. But I think what people are really loving about T. Kingfisher, because she's definitely getting more popular in the book community lately, is that she has a very fun humor to the way that she writes. So even though The Hollow Places was a horror book, it still had like a fun way that it was written. Like it was spooky at times, but it also made me laugh, and so I really enjoyed reading that. So I'm pretty excited to pick up Sword Heart because this is a true cozy fantasy. This centers on a woman who inherits the wealth of, I believe, like her great uncle. His family did not expect that he was going to leave the money to her, so at the very start of the book they are trying to force her to marry her cousin. And I think she finds a sword like in the room that she's staying in, and when she opens the sword a man comes out of it, and so he is like her protector because now she is the owner of the sword because she inherited it from her uncle. I don't know, I think that's my general gist of like what I know about this book and what Riley has said. And lastly, I'm going to pick up the cozy fantasy that everyone's been talking about this year, and that is Legends and Lattes. My understanding of this book is that it is about a woman who is an orc. I think she's like a warrior, and she's tired of the fighting life. She's tired of like being a mercenary, and so she wants to move to a small town and open a coffee shop. But because it's in a fantasy setting and she's an orc and like everyone is different like fantasy creatures, no one has ever heard of coffee, so she has to kind of educate the village that she's living in about the coffee. And from what I know, it's very low stakes, it's very sweet, it's very calming, just a cozy time. I'm really excited to be picking up these 3 books because daylight savings has been ruining my life lately. Like when it gets dark at like 5 p.m. I just feel sad. Like I don't feel good. It's giving like seasonal depression. Like I don't enjoy it. Okay besties, I did that thing that I do where I get really into a book and I forget to film a talking update where I tell you what I'm thinking about it. So I'm this far into Long Shadow, so I'm almost done with it. So I'm a little late telling you what I think of it, but that's fine. I obviously am really liking it because I'm flying through it. Something that is so good about this book is that it's sapphic. We love to see it because the other 2 books were both like hetero couples, which is totally fine, totally cute. The only thing I would complain about romance-wise in this book is that I do wish that the 2 female love interests had more chemistry between them. Like when I was reading Half a Soul, I was literally screaming at how giddy I was over the romance. Like I was like kicking my feet, I was blushing, I was like, oh my god, this is so cute. And I don't really feel that with this. Like I still like the story because it has all the elements of being very fairy tale-esque and very Regency cozy, but as far as the actual like romance, I'm not like shipping them as much as I did in the first 2 books. I don't really know how it's gonna end. There were some things revealed in the last chapter that didn't necessarily surprise me. I did think they were a possibility at one point, but then I kind of forgot about it. I don't know if you ever do that where you guess what the plot twist is gonna be and you're totally right, but then you forget that you guessed that and you just keep reading and then you're like, oh my god, the twist is literally what I thought. Hello besties, I have finished Long Shadow and I'm gonna rate it 4 stars. I kind of felt the same about it that I had been saying before, which is that it was still really cute and I really liked it. I love Olivia Atwater's writing and I love this series of like Regency fairy tales, but overall it just wasn't as good as the first 2 books. I did give the second book 4 stars as well. I think the first book, Half a Soul, is just really the best in the series, but Long Shadow was still cute. I appreciated the sapphic romance and I look forward to her hopefully writing more in this series. I would love to read more of these fairy tales. I think they're really precious and really sweet, and it definitely fit the bill of being a cozy fantasy. So I have since moved on to Sword Heart. I'm a good way through that right now and I am really loving it. I think I am really a big fan of T. Kingfisher. This writing is so fun. It has that same humorous tone that I saw in The Hollow Places, but obviously even more so in this because it's a cozy fantasy and not a horror book, and so I am just enjoying it so much. I love Hala, the main female character. She is so funny. She does this thing where she talks so much and she asks so many questions, it just annoys everyone around her to the point where she ends up doing really clever things, like when they get robbed by like highway bandits or they have run-ins with like religious fanatics, she'll just like talk their ears off and then they will leave her alone because they don't know what to do with her. And so she's so funny and I love her chemistry with Sarkis. Like, I'm really loving the romance and it's so cute so far. Also, something that I noticed is there's this part of the book where they go through this area called the Vagrant Hills, which are like these really ominous hills that have like weird creatures in them and they always move around. And it reminded me a lot of The Hollow Places, and I feel like she was making a nod to The Hollow Places. So I looked up publication and Sword Heart actually came out first, but I feel like she wrote about the Vagrant Hills and then used that as inspiration to write The Hollow Places. So I'm noticing a connection between her work despite them being different genres. So I'm really loving that aspect. Right now I'm sitting in a parking lot because I had to go to the office today, and it's also voting day in Georgia because, oh my god, somebody just pulled up next to me. I look like a freak. I look like a freak right now. Unfortunately, Georgia voters cannot be trusted, and over 1 million people voted for Herschel Walker, which is very confusing because he literally has tried to murder his wife and said he believes in vampires. So I don't know why we're here, but I had to do the runoff today, so I had to go vote for Warnock, so that's why I'm in a parking lot right now. And I just thought, why not update you guys about my reading? I have updates for you besties. I have finished Sword Heart, and I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. It was the perfect mix of cozy fantasy meets romance. Like, Sarkis and Hala were so cute together. I really enjoyed the premise overall. I really liked that the magic system wasn't very complex. From my understanding, from what I've seen on Goodreads, this is actually a part of a bigger world that T. Kingfisher has been writing in. It's not necessarily a part of a series, but it's from the same world as like her Clock Tower series or whatever. So I'm very curious to read more of her cozy fantasy and kind of see how they all connect. Like I was saying earlier, I really feel like the hills in this book really inspired her for The Hollow Places, so I'd love to just keep seeing her mind and how everything like comes together in her books. Overall, it was very cute and I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I think what kept me from giving it 5 stars was just some of the pacing, and then also I'm not a huge fan of road trip stories. Like, I'll read them and I can enjoy them, but that's not my favorite trope or setting for a story. And most of this book takes place over the course of a journey where Hala and Sarkis are going one place and they're going to another place, and then Hala's going to another place. There's a lot of travel in this book, and that's just not normally my favorite thing in a story, but still very cute. 4 stars, would highly recommend, and I really enjoyed it. So moving on, I did finish Legends and Lattes. I would have updated you guys midway through reading this, but it was a pretty short book, so I read it all in one sitting yesterday. This story is really cute. It's very cozy. If you love coffee, I really feel like you'd like this. If you like the ambiance of cafes and just sipping different types of coffee and eating baked goods, like, this book feels like a warm hug, and you can just like almost smell the aromas of being in a really darling cafe. I personally don't drink coffee, but the descriptions of food and drink in this book made me wish that I did. I just have never liked coffee. I don't like the taste, but it still was so cute. I loved the characters. Like Thimble, oh my god, my favorite character. He is so cute. He is this mouse that is their baker that makes all of the food for the cafe, and he is just so cute. There's also a sapphic romance between Viv and Tandri, I believe her name is, the succubus that works for her at the cafe, and their romance was very cute. And I did really enjoy that this story was very low stakes. There are definitely some, you know, characters or things that are threatening the cafe and different things that happen, but overall it's just a very adorable story about someone opening up a cafe, and I think the fantasy setting just lends a lot to it. The title, Legends and Lattes, is so perfect. That's also the name that she decides to name the actual cafe, and so it's just It's so cute. It feels like if you took D&D and mixed it up with like Animal Crossing, this would be the book. I can totally see why everybody has been ranting and raving about this. I am giving it 4 stars only because I was having a little bit of trouble like focusing on the story yesterday, and I don't know if that's a me problem, but I didn't like fall in love to the point where I was like, oh my god, this is a 5-star read. But it was still super cute and I would really highly recommend it. I actually bought a copy the minute I finished reading it yesterday. I ordered it on Amazon, so I'm pretty excited to have that on my bookshelf. But I'll probably reread this again in the future, and I feel like this is the type of book where I could see my rating maybe eventually going up if I read it again and enjoyed it even more. Like, I feel like my enjoyment is only going to increase every time I reread this, and this is definitely the type of book that would be really easy to reread because it is so short and sweet, and it's just cozy and makes you feel good inside. Like, it's good. But that brings us to the end of this cozy fantasy vlog. I feel like it just lifted my spirits and made me feel good. Yesterday when I was walking my dog Billy at like 5 p.m, that's when I was listening to Legends and Lattes on an audiobook, and I feel like I was not as depressed about it being dark at like 5:30. So we love to see it. I really recommend this genre if you're looking to read fantasy but you're not in the mood for like super high fantasy. Like, I recently read a Brandon Sanderson book and I feel like I hadn't read high fantasy in a while, and I was like sweating trying to understand the world building. But what I love about all these cozy fantasy books is that you don't really have to like break your brain to understand what's going on. So it was just really adorable overall. I'm loving it. I'm having a good time. Let me know what your favorite cozy fantasy books are down below, or even just your favorite cozy books, because I am just loving the genre of cozy. It just makes me feel so good inside. And if you've made it to the end of this video, feel free to use the teddy bear emoji in your comment to let me know that you enjoyed it. And I look forward to discussing these books in the comments with you guys, and maybe just talking about cozy books in general. Yeah, thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.